All right. Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis. I'm president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Tommy Lewis, President and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting.
Tommy. Good morning, man. How are you?
Doing well, Eric. Doing well. It's been a great morning. It's a brisk morning this morning in Southwest Ohio. I think fall is definitely upon us, but I'm always blessed to be able to wake up at least to smell that crispness in the air. But it's a good morning. It's a good morning.
It is a good morning. We want to welcome you all to Diversity Conversations. Those of you that are joining us with The Voice, we want to thank you for your support. Those of you that are just regular a part of our community from week to week, we are so glad. Tommy and I are so glad to be joining you all. And you know what? We're doing this for free. We just love the conversation, and you all make it better and richer for us, don't they, Tommy?
Oh, absolutely. That's what it's about. It's a conversation, not just between two people, you and I, that talk all the time, Eric, right?
Right.
But it's the community. And not only the community that joins us, but the conversations that are in those other separate communities. So that's what this is about, building upon each other and growing and prospering.
Right. Today we have been joined by, we're entering into YouTube for our first week. We're on a new platform today.
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to progress, trying to move forward and give people a number of different ways to join us. As each week, we want to start this week sort of talking about how our week was. Tommy, why don't you open up and just share kind of how your week was professionally, personally?
Well, I'll start personally, Eric. A couple of weeks ago, I was out on a golf course just trying to grab a quick nine. And there was a older gentleman in front of me who was behind a foursome of women. And the pace was a little bit slow. I noticed that the older gentleman in front of me was playing pretty well, right? And so I assumed that it was the foursome ahead of him. I ended up catching up with him because I was playing by myself. And through God's will, we hit it off.
Yeah.
We hit it off.
Yeah.
And so now we've come to our third week of coming together and grabbing a quick nine.
Yeah.
He's a retired physician, a surgeon, actually. He is 79 years old, and we have the best of fun, Eric.
Right.
Just getting out there and
Right.
like we do. So personally, I've been blessed with a new friend. I've been able to throw some things off of him as a white man as well. And so I will say that God continues to work in my life to provide me the network, the access to experiences that I need to share with other people. And then with that being said, on the professional side, still doing diversity training, obviously with a particular school district, and had some challenges with participation.
Mm-hmm.
The teaching staff, Eric, did not want to speak up, to be honest. Just 90-minute session, 50 people in each each class, and only about 2 or 3 people were sharing. So I was really a bit frustrated, and I'm always around continuous improvement. So I've been thinking about that. How could I do better? What can I do better? And you share some great tidbits with me as well.
Excellent, Tommy. You know, Tommy, that is going to be a part of our conversation this morning, too. The theme that we're going to lean into today is really recognizing when you're wrong and what actions you can take to make it right. And so that's in that space. I'm going to come back to that. My week was a great week as well, Tommy. Always love the time that I'm able to spend with my family. Unfortunately, my middle son, got robbed this week.
Oh,
and,
no.
He's staying downtown, and a person came upon him, man, with a gun. And he had the wisdom and the quick thinking to sort of throw his wallet and his phone in an opposite direction. Then he jetted in an opposite direction. Yep. So that was great thinking on his part. But to be awakened, at 4:30 in the morning, man, and to hear that your son's, been robbed, and we need to try to figure out how to call 911 and get all of that. So that was a bit challenging for us, and he's shaken coming from that. So that's on the downside a bit. On the professional side, many of us certainly in our field are familiar with the executive order that the president put out that focused on really trying to cancel out diversity and inclusion training. It started with sort of, white privilege and race theory. But then it eventually came to diversity and inclusion. All that's got to be reviewed with an eye towards trying to cancel out as much of that as possible. So I've got one department within the U.S. government that was really scrutinizing me on some of the material that I was sharing. And I think that our material is actually supported under the Constitution and under what the U.S. is supposed to be about. What we do does not divide. It actually makes sure that we have a stronger, more unified fighting force, where the people who are best qualified to lead and to do different roles and jobs are in those positions. I think that that's motherhood and apple pie. Yeah. But, with the department coming back to me on a couple of occasions, trying to tweak and really censor some of the things that we do. Man, I love this. This was such a beautiful thought. God brings some thoughts to your mind. With this particular department, I had done something that I've never done before. I had asked people during focus groups and during fish bowls if it was okay to videotape those in order to share those with the broader audience. And they said yes. That's the first time we've ever done that. So you know what I said to the government? Hey, I ain't got to say nothing.
Yeah.
I don't have to even introduce one of my slides. Yep. We just going to sit around and listen to what your people have to say about your culture. And then we'll do some Q&A around that. And so I'm excited about that, Tommy, because God will open doors and give you insights that you don't even know why.
Yes.
But the truth that the employees shared on those video clips, from white guys just really laying it out there, man, telling the truth. From women telling the truth. From people that are gay, lesbian, telling the truth. People of color, man. And so, we've got to be focused on doing the right thing. When organizations, when there are blocks that look like they can get in our way, I think that God and our faith prepares us a way of escape, so that message that people need to hear, that somehow that is able to still get done and accomplished. So I'm grateful for that, man.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story. My prayers with you and your son and your family, Eric, as well, in the mental and spiritual healing per the experience that he encountered. And there's something that I use in training, and I've gotten it from another source, a simple equation of E plus R equals O. And so the E is the event that we can never control. The R is our response to that event. And then the O is the outcome, which we cannot control. So we cannot control the event or the outcome. We can only control our response. So for your son, the event happened, but how will he respond? Will it make him more guarded and kind of skeptical of particular environments? Will it just make him more visible, right? Just aware. And then also, we know from an emotional intelligence perspective that these events create schemas, story reels.
That's right.
When there's a trigger, we can move right back into that story.
Exactly.
Right? So our effort is to not allow that negative event to become a sustained story in our psyche and in our being, that we can infuse some positive self-talk to overwhelm any other negative self-talk. That's the science about it. In reality, we get impacted.
No doubt about it, Tommy. But in line with what you're saying, so what I'm going to do is one of the things I'm going to do is getting prepared with sort of a little safety kit, of some things no need to get a gun, but I'm gonna get him some strong mace.
Yep.
So he can just have that in his pocket, that aerosol type thing. And that's more about giving you the confidence that you have something that you can handle, that you would always be prepared if somebody walk up to, because I mean, my son, he's very strong, very tough. Right choice to throw this stuff in that direction, go to you not winning against no gun.
Yeah.
So that's the right choice no matter what. But trying to get over the mental hump of always looking now around at who might be after me next. You do need some things to kind of calm down that schema. So thank you for that. That's excellent. Tommy, let's go ahead and open up, and we're going to ask the community to join in with us. Again, the topic that we've chosen is recognizing when you're wrong, and then what actions can you take to make it right. I think that that's a conversation. We want to look at that from a professional standpoint, and then we want to look at that from a personal standpoint. Tommy, let me open up and then give you a minute to kind of think through some things as well with a professional example. So I had the opportunity, the honor this year of being able to give the keynote address at the University of Cincinnati's Inclusion Conference. Powerful event, man. I think we had over 500 people. It was the largest group they'd ever had. And it went extremely well. And then I had a Q&A, man, for about, 30 minutes, Tommy, that was just beautiful, man. There were so many professors and students and others that were weighing in and commending me, but asking questions, making comments, man. And so I was just looking at it last night. Dr. Karen Bankston sent me a copy of that, the link. And so I had a chance to sort of take a look at it last night. And Tommy, when I looked at it, I saw something that I wasn't pleased with. I saw that a wonderful professor had made a comment that was it was a beautiful comment. I remember when she made it during the time, and I thought to myself, that was very thoughtful. But Tommy, you know how it is sometimes as a consultant, when somebody says something and you have a tangential thought. It's not really a response, and I probably have done it here with us sometimes. It wasn't exactly a response to what was said. It was a tangential point that needed to be made, and so you sort of make that point, but you never really acknowledge well enough what the person has said.
Yeah.
When I saw that, Tommy, I was disappointed, and I saw it as a participant. And I said to myself, that wasn't right. I missed that. And so I literally started hunting for her. And I found her, man, just Googled her and found her on the internet and sent her an email and apologized and just said, I just want to let you know that I thought the point you made was amazing, was really thoughtful. And honestly, I didn't respond to it in the way that I would have liked to during the event. I just wanted to send you an email to tell you I'm sorry and to affirm you. And so, Tommy, I think it's hard to do sometimes professionally. And I'll give another story after you share some things around how that can be difficult personally as well. But I think, man, when we make mistakes, when we find ourselves having done something that's wrong, and we got to look at what's the right response.
So, Eric, I may have more of these missteps, mistakes than I will care for. As you mentioned, as consultants, trainers, coaches, I personally get so involved, or professionally, so involved in the moment where if someone, and I know this about myself, which can be a positive and a negative. If someone shares something with me that I'm inspired by, or I'm learning from, it's a nugget of wisdom, my energy inside and my mind just explodes, right? With thoughts and other experiences and things like that. And what happens for me is that my speech, my flow is fragmented, is dislocated, right? And I have professionally lost audiences in the moment. I've had other people who knew what was happening follow up with me and say, it looked like you had a lot of things going through your head. I said, yeah, I had a few. What do you mean? He says, you talked about 8 different things in those 2 minutes.
Wow.
Yep. And I know, I'm like, okay, I'm all over the place. And from a facilitation perspective, that's not good.
Right.
And I've made that mistake. And I've had to learn to be even more quiet and silent and present in the moment of my own epiphany, right? Because oftentimes I found myself providing other people the platform to have their epiphany, right? So they're blowing up, but they don't have to share it back. But when I get mine, I'm like, oh, that's great, because I can tie this to my family, because I'm dealing with my wife and then my children, whatever. And they're like, we asked you for a strategic plan. What are you talking about, family? That happened this week, Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happened this week with the teachers I was working with that weren't participating.
Right.
I got emotionally hijacked. I tried to interject a personal story so they can make a connection.
Right.
They were silent after the story. I shared it for a minute or two. So I added another story.
Right.
They were silent again, Eric. And so what did I do? I added another story. It was story overkill. 2 teachers turned around.
Oh.
Yes, they did. 2 teachers turned around. And that's that third time. That's when I'm like, oh, I'm talking too much.
Yeah.
Right. And I turned it back over to them.
Tommy, so I love the analogy that you just gave because you said that they physically turned around.
Yep.
I would suggest that when we make those missteps, that people are all turning around.
Yep.
Whether they do it physically or not, when I got off on the wrong track, they're turning around. And sometimes I'm trying to just run around to the other side and yell at them anyway.
Right.
You ain't gonna ignore me. I'm about to get over on that side and yell at you. So you got to turn around another way. I'll give you an example. And Judy has joined us, online. So I want to share this because this does relate to her. Yeah. She knows that there are pet peeves that I have around how we should do the work that we do and how organizations, what it means for an organization to put forth a legitimate effort. Tommy, when I see him going towards what I perceive as window dressing,
yeah,
there's a whole lecture series in me. And I literally would go chapter 1, verse 1, I'm about to tell you, it's like, what are you doing? Hey, what is you doing, bro? This business, what are you doing? And I'm grateful that I have a wife who has given me another perspective. And then, I have our own learning that helps us to understand that people and organizations are at all kind of different places. Yeah. And sometimes, if you're going to do this work effectively, you got to be willing to crawl with people and walk with them before you can ever run. And so if they come back to you if they're unlearned about the subject matter, they come back to you with an unlearned response, well, that shouldn't elicit anger or frustration. And so you have to really, now I would say that there's a balance line between giving people honorable, honest, integrity-centered feedback and just being offended because they are not as committed right now, or they don't know any better right now. Yeah. And so as you and I were talking before the show, I was saying to you that one of my responses has been, and I've said this example, but it just fits. And so I'll say it again, that in 1964, 45% of adults smoked before the Surgeon General came out with the Surgeon General's report that talked about how smoking can hurt your lungs and your heart and kill you. And so now we only have 13% of adults that are smokers. I think that you've got to give more illumination. And so one of my responses to clients that will, you and I experience this all the time. Clients will go through an RFP process. They'll vet a number of companies. They'll scrutinize every word that we say, and then they'll choose us. And they have chosen us after vetting us past a number of other companies. And then we do some pilot training, and they'll want to, hey, you said this, and I'm not sure if that got everybody on, and can you cover this? And they hit all of that. And then after all of that, they'll say, well, can you do train the trainer so we can just let some of our young managers? And you're saying, what?
Yeah.
I mean, you just sent me through a whole scrutiny thing, and now you're telling me to. So Judy knows that's one of the things that sort of it's almost like a disrespect for the work that we do, is to say that it can be reduced down to a few talking points and anybody here can do that. So the response is not anger or even overly frustration. It really is, how do you build a better mousetrap? How do you educate them more fully around the pros and cons? Are there absolutely things that companies can do themselves? Yes, you and I certainly, we believe in that. We believe that companies should try to do a lot of the work to solve a lot of their own problems. That's awesome. But there are some things that they can't do as effectively because they're constrained by their positions, about their ability to create transparent and safe environments where they can speak freely about diversity-related topics, as well as their people. But what I did, I sort of came up out of a dream and said, we've got to do more illumination. We've got to help to educate people why they should consider the pathway that we're recommending. So that's just another example of how should you respond when either you've done something wrong or you have a wrong view about something.
And another thing to consider, as you were sharing, Eric, I was thinking that organizations, they hire us as a third-party objective view of their people, their process, and their culture, right? And they know what they know. They know the ins and outs of their organizations for the most part. They know at the end of the day, the whys behind their behavior. Some of their whys is because it's comfortable. Some of their whys is because it's safe. Some of their whys is because I like to have people around me that look and think and behave like me, which makes me comfortable. And then again, they hire folks like us and we assess it to say, have you seen this? Kind of exposing some blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
As an individual professional, I have worked hard to surround myself with other individuals to give me that same feedback, right? As if I'm the corporation, I'm the business, me as an individual. So these people may have certain expertise, such as business management or business acumen. And I asked them, did I approach that professionally? And they would say, well, yes, you did on this page, but the next page you didn't, right? Sometimes you need to keep more of a poker face, if you will. Sometimes you need to show more emotion, so for the 15, 20 minutes, you were just staring and no facial expression. They didn't know if they were connecting. Give some affirmation that you agree or you're with them. And I found myself, because I'm an engineer by training, everything has to add up. And when I'm listening and it's not adding up, I'm trying to fix it in my head. So I get that serious kind of focused look. And I've been advised by my individual sounding boards, no, you have to be able to ebb and flow.
Right.
And I would say this, Eric, because our last time together in a sales meeting, I thoroughly enjoyed it because I was able to ebb and flow. There were a lot of things that you were sharing that I hadn't thought about, and then it triggered my thinking. I was able to add my 2 cents or my dime or my quarter back up, ebb and flow
Right. Right.
toward a common goal of success.
Right.
So professionally, I'm like, this is what I need more. That's why I enjoy our conversations and our partnership and friendship.
Right, right, exactly. So let me continue, and I want the community to weigh in on this conversation as well. Tommy, so when we're in a professional setting, a business setting, there are times when we're wrong and we don't know we're wrong. So we're doing something that may not be the best pathway, and we don't really recognize that. And then there are times that we're wrong and we know we're wrong.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes hard to pull yourself out of it. It's just like, yeah, I know this ain't the right way to do it, but I gotta say this. It's wrong. I know it's wrong. I'll give you an example. Forget that. So here I am working with a client. Been working with them for a couple of months on a keynote address. Now, that's rare that a client will ever ask me to do a speech to all the leaders and then will spend 4 or 5 sessions with me sort of vetting through what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
So I already didn't love that. I already did not love that. But we've made it through to the final meeting. So here we are in the final meeting. They invited 2 new people that hadn't been along with the process.
Mm-hmm.
And so the 2 new people come in and hijack everything and want to send us back like in a Monopoly game back to start.
Mm-hmm.
So go back to the beginning. Tommy, everything in me was outraged. And so before I know it, my witty thoughtfulness,
yeah,
and my freedom and my independent entrepreneurship attitude and pride start just saying, I ain't got to take that. And boom, boom, everything in my mind is saying, business 101. Don't argue with the client. They always right.
Yeah.
No, but I'm just like,
Yeah. Let's get it on.
Y'all wrong. And all my mind was saying, they're wrong. You've been doing a process that you didn't really want to do. You done it for 4 or 5 different meetings. Now Johnny come lately, 2 Johnny come latelys gonna show up today with no history. And Tommy, finally God had to just scream so loud, hey, fool, what is he doing? Abort. And finally, okay. Here you go, Tommy. Let me see if I'm understanding what you're saying. So now I got to go back to 101 paraphrasing. Didn't want to do it. I just want to debate and argue back and forth for a few more minutes. I saw, how they doing on the debate watches?
Yeah.
Where they go to a little line, what's happening with the people during the debate? They feel better, worse. I was like, damn. I saw the line going down, Tommy. I saw the line going down. I didn't care. But I say the voice of God. I heard the voice of my wife saying, hey, what are you doing? You got kids to feed. So finally, I got myself together, man. I went to active listening and paraphrase and had the nerve to act like that was just a practice. I was showing them a skill that we're going to teach during the thing, Horrible.
And I think, Eric, that is a skill that people have to develop over time, as well as be intentional to learn the skill in the moment that experience is happening. So in other words, these events can keep on happening, but if we haven't learned from the lessons of the event, then we're doomed to repeat the event again, our response. And like you, what I've learned is to to listen to that loud voice. That loud voice could be the voice of God, could be the voice of our wives or husbands, significant others, or family members of past friends. That voice could be the voice of motivation and goal. In other words, if the goal is to do business, then that voice is saying, if you keep talking, we're not going to do business.
Say it again, Tommy.
Yeah, that's that key voice around those mental board members. Say, our goal is to do business with the partner, and then you're talking, and that voice says, yeah, we're not going to do business. But keep talking and just make sure that we go down in a ball of flames, right?
And hold on, I'm gonna say something about that, Tommy. I'll say something about that. You know this from golf. When you talk to people that golf, they always tell you about their best rounds.
Yes,
they
sir.
don't tell you about their worst rounds, do they? That's how it is, man. Sometimes, Tommy, we have gone down in a big ball of flames, and it's on fire everywhere. You see yourself on fire, and you just gonna crash this thing in style.
No, so Eric, see the thing, you hit it on the head. When we are wrong and we're going down in a ball of fire, if we do not recorrect or we don't have that cultural humility,
right,
we will tell people, hey, I was on fire. Help me understand which fire. No, I mean, listen, they had some pushback. I pushed back with them. Right. I'm telling you, I was on point. I was on fire. The other side said, yeah, you were on fire. You were a ball of fire, just like a meteor coming from the sky, crashing into Earth, right? Is that what you wanted? You wanted to crash and burn? No. You wasn't on fire.
Yeah.
You were cold as ice.
Right.
You need to make that readjustment, right? That's cultural humility, to be humble that we too can develop. We too can make mistakes. Obviously, we're imperfect, but who and what is going to teach us? And are we open enough to listen?
And that's what I love about life. Beautiful part about it is life is one of our best teachers.
Yes, sir.
And if you go hungry enough, and if you lose enough business, you might fool around and learn something.
Yep.
It's kind of like us looking at our kids, the older our children get, they start spreading their wings. Now they're flying, they flapping them. And you try to tell them something, and sometimes they'll look at you like, I got this. The world just began when I entered it.
Yes.
Yeah, the world just began when I entered it. So let me do my thing, old people. Okay. And sometimes you got to just zip it, Tommy. Zoop. You look like you got it. And sometimes, on rare occasions, it works out for them. But oftentimes, it's just another nail, man, in that coffin of life. The coffin that we create, that we build out of pride, that won't allow us to learn more quickly in these moments. And I'm grateful for that. Judy says here, she puts up this quote, Brene Brown says, appropriate vulnerability is a leadership skill. In some ways, this is counter some of our traditional cultural views around leadership. Tommy, I think that's a powerful point, man. And it's one that we don't see enough because people are so afraid of their weaknesses. And oftentimes our brain is not designed to help us see our wrongs as clearly as we need to. And that just begins to plague us for too long.
Yeah, Eric, let me give a brief example of why I think that this statement and what Judy has shared and Brene Brown is right on point. Several years ago in the Cincinnati community, at the University of Cincinnati or the surrounding community, there's an African-American man, Samuel Du Bois, who was fatally shot by a University of Cincinnati police officer.
Yep.
And there's some, controversy around that. The facts or lack of facts, and obviously a lot of energy was created within the UC community and the greater Cincinnati community at large. I was blessed to be working with Dr. Bluzette Marshall and Dr. Santa Ono. Dr. Santa Ono was the president of the university. Dr. Bluzette Marshall was the vice president of diversity and equity. And in working with both of them, who are very, very intelligent people, very thoughtful, very intuitive.
Absolutely.
Working with Dr. Ono, who is the leader of the institution, he was asking very specific questions around this idea of having healing sessions, basically open forums that students and faculty and community members could share their thoughts and their feelings through a guided discussion. I was the facilitator to guide the discussion. And so Dr. Ono was sharing some very specific questions just to make himself more familiar and prepared. After about, I would like to say, 3 or 4 weeks of preparation, the day of the event had arrived. It was standing room only.
Mm.
In the space that we had could comfortably seat, I think it was around 175, maybe 200 people. It was a large auditorium, standing room only. The media was there, etc.
Wow.
Dr. Ono was given in the agenda about 3 minutes to share opening remarks. Dr. Marshall will share kind of the purpose of our time there together, and then turn it over to me to begin the conversation. Dr. Ono gets up, looks out in the crowd, reads a couple of his scripted notes, looks back up into the crowd, takes off his glasses, puts his glasses back on, and says, I'm not going to go to the script. I don't know what to do here. I need your help. I need the UC community and the Cincinnati community to help us all heal. Mm. And he begins to share a personal story about himself and his family and other times. I'm looking around the room and folks were leaning forward on the edge of their seat because they had never experienced a leader who was in front of them saying, I need help, let us help each other. It was tremendous vulnerability because they were there to complain and for him to hear and to answer the complaint. Why did this happen? In his heart of hearts and mind of minds, he didn't know why it happened. In fact, no one knew why. Right. No one, right, really knew why. And so that's vulnerability, to actually say, I'm wrong. And that wasn't the case with Dr. Ono, right? But that's just the topic that we're talking about. I'm wrong, and here's what I'm willing to do to correct it. That takes a certain level of vulnerability, and I'm learning day in and day out.
Tommy, I love that story, man. You got to finish it, though. Tommy, what'd you do? Tommy, what'd you do, man?
Yeah, okay.
I mean.
So what I did, he asked me, he was up on the podium, he asked in front of everyone, said, Tommy, can I have a few extra minutes? I said, absolutely, right?
Right.
So what I did is 2 things, Eric. When I came up, and Dr. Marshall, who was supposed to bring me up, she acquiesced to me. She just threw to me. Why don't you go ahead and do it? I think we're ready to roll. So sure. So I went up and I reiterated some pieces that Dr. Ono has shared around being vulnerable, around not always having the answer, around the need for each and every one of us to help each other. And then I went into kind of the first and second discussion point. And the second discussion point was, something that was very provocative. And there were a number of people, Eric, that jumped up and they were blaming and shaming. And what I did do as the facilitator with the microphone, I allowed that person to share. And then I affirmed that they had a voice. Thank you for sharing. Your voice as powerful as anyone else. And we would love to hear from everyone else. But I would like to ask you, what's your solution to that complaint, that grievance, that concern? What should we do? Well,
Ooh.
well, well, yeah, and it had people thinking, if I'm going to share a complaint, not to just throw the dagger or throw the stone, right, but also have the mortar to build the foundation for the home that we all have to live in. Coming together as a community, as a country, as a world takes us all brick by brick, mortar by mortar, effort by effort. And that's what I did and laid it out. So 90 minutes later, 250 people, give or take, in the auditorium, we moved away with voices heard and also actionable items to move forward. I think it was a great, great event and a series of events as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that if we just look at, and this is not a political statement actually, but if we just look at the last debate that the president and Vice President Joe Biden had, we saw two different styles. Number one, we saw from the president probably the best debate that I've ever seen him do. So I thought that he was as presidential as he's ever been in all the years that we've seen him. So I thought that he was on top of his game and he was sharp. And we saw Vice President Obama. Vice President Obama. Vice President Biden. Funny. Vice President Biden was sharp. But for those of us that know his history, know that he grew up had a lot of challenges with stuttering, and so there were a couple of times I think that because of his nerves, he stuttered a couple of times, and he was really stumbling, and it looked as though his body, his mind recognized that the pressure of this moment was huge, that in many ways the whole world was watching him. But I think that there's something that that Americans, many of them, saw in that when they heard his compassion for the nation and for people. And even if I'm stuttering and say that if you choose me as your president, I'll be the president of all Americans. You know, and when he was talking about what's happening around your dinner table and things like that, I just think, man, there's some real power to sometimes, Tommy, not being our sharpest, but just trying to be our most authentic selves. And I think that that has the ability to power through our human inadequacies.
Yeah, yeah. Eric, man, I love you to death, man. As I listen, look, last week when I was having the diversity, equity, and inclusion training with the middle school, elementary school client, I had to have four facilitators. Myself was one of those facilitators. And in the 90-minute session, in my mind, didn't go well because these teachers were not participating. Our training is at the end of the day.
Yep.
90 minutes at the end of the day, and they are tired.
That's right.
I'm showing up, ramping myself up after a long day,
Right.
to deliver what I expect and what they may or may not expect, because I don't know their expectations, but I have my expectations and make it plain expectations. What I just heard from you, Eric, is that I didn't think I had my best performance.
Mhm.
I really didn't. It was not my best performance at all. I got emotionally hijacked. I got frustrated. The technology kept breaking down, so I couldn't go through my slides. And it was only about 8 slides in 90 minutes. It was just a trifecta
Right.
of errors,
Right.
a calamity of errors.
Right. Right. I've been there.
Right. And what I just heard from you that resonated in my spirit, Eric, was to simply say, I had a bad game. I had a bad game. And that's what my wife was telling me last night as well. right? She blessed me with a little facial and a hand massage, doing my nails. I love my wife for it. She hooked me up, and my stress is in my hands and my feet. And she was like, "You had a bad game. It wasn't that you weren't perfect. You lost." And when she said that from a very loving and caring perspective, I thought of myself as the athlete that I am. I have lost games.
Right.
It wasn't my best game, right?
Right.
Go back to practice, study some more, take some things out, right? Stop holding the ball too long, stop doing certain things. I was wrong. Stop, stop, stop. So I'm going to have a better game next time because I'm going to pass the ball more and not story after story after story. Just simply accept where they are in their fatigue, in their exhaustion, in the few that were engaged to engage them, and keep it moving and wrap it up and close it.
Beautiful. So that's what we should take from this. So remember, the theme is what happens when things go wrong? What do you do when you're wrong? And so wrong can mean the time of the day it was.
Yeah.
Wrong could mean nobody has the energy at the end of a long day, especially if they've been doing this. They've been doing virtual stuff.
Yeah.
They're just exhausted. There's two parts that I would share with you from the story that I shared about the debate. The first part certainly is we can say, hey, I didn't have a good game that day or I lost. That's one way I could look at it. But another way I could look at it is that when I come to the game to give my best, if I do that, then that's probably sufficient. That somebody's going to get something out of that. And there are other people that are going to see past my failings and still get the message. And I think that's the part of us, Tommy, that leans in on our faith. God, whatever in my weakness, your strength is made perfect. And so we have to be in those places of weakness. Because see, when we're strong too often, Tommy, I think we lean on ourselves too much. You see, when we're strong and succeeding too often, sometimes pride can come in on that, and where we begin to think, I got this. I don't need no feedback now. I don't need God. I mean, I've seen it with leaders in business. I've seen it in pastors in churches, man. When people get to a place where they start getting some good press and they start reading that press, now they're not just reading it, they feeling it, baby. They feeling it. I'm somebody. I'm somebody. Even if they don't say it, and some of them say it. But even if they don't say it, if your demeanor starts operating out of that, because Tommy, as you and I start turning certain corners in business, some days you can feel good about yourself, can't you?
Yes.
You can say, ooh, man, I'm in a pretty good season, baby.
Yeah.
We're doing this thing, Tommy. And I think that there is value in your self-esteem being rewarded by success. But I think you got to watch that line very closely, man, because attached to success is pride, and attached to pride is arrogance, and attached to arrogance is failure. And so I think that we have to just watch those things, man, to make sure that we don't get ourselves to arrogance, because that's not where you and I want to be. And I think that sometimes when you're in a world, especially when you've played the role of the underdog, when you start just getting in the game at level, now you're on the level playing field, and maybe now you're advancing the ball. What I do, Tommy, is I start thinking about how can I invest in others? Who else can I bring along? Because I refuse to succeed by myself. And I know that success is fleeting. And so if you're by yourself, there's a strong probability that you won't be there long, because there's always some people gunning for you, ain't it, Tommy?
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. And it's this self-awareness, professionally around what we have done wrong and how to correct, that takes some boldness and courage as well. Because there are a lot of there are not a lot, but there are some people that I know that do a very, very good job in self-awareness and recreating correct in the moment, right? And then there's others that, they know they're wrong. I guess they do, and and they haven't changed. So one of my questions is, turning the tables. When you experience someone that you know is wrong, how do you give feedback to them such that it is received and implemented without shaming or blaming or victimizing them for being wrong? How do you do that?
That's a very good question. Then right after this one, I'm going to come to this statement that Judy has posed. But Tommy, that's not an easy question to answer. It's easy to answer when you're not on the spot.
Yeah.
But I find that oftentimes we mismanage our response. And I think in the space of diversity and inclusion, we're horrible at it.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than a diversity and inclusion expert getting on a high horse to try to tell somebody all about technically why they're wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, man, and so what I do is I'm reminded of my own humanness and my own frailty. I think it's the thing that literally set my business on a completely different trajectory when I moved from blaming and shaming people to becoming transparent myself, more vulnerable myself, sharing my own biases, and creating environments that were psychologically safe.
Yes.
So I think that one of the things that we have to do is we have to go soft and easy on people that we perceive as wrong. Number one, we could misperceive it, and we could not be seeing things as they are.
Yeah.
But two, we have to make a decision on what outcome are we trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And all too often, Tommy, the outcome we trying to achieve is to get somebody told.
Yep.
I'm about to get you told. I don't care how you respond to this. You wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your brain is just saying, get him, get him, get him, get him. As soon as your mentality is that, you're already defeated.
Yeah.
I think almost like a surgeon, man, you have to be able to back. You have to be able to step back. You have to be able to almost rise above the situation. And sometimes you can start by paraphrasing, just doing empathic listening, where instead of reacting, let me see if I'm understanding what you're saying. And then just like a tape recorder, you repeat back to them the content of what they said and the feelings that they expressed, and then check back, is that what you said? Sometimes when people hear it back, it will help them to say, you know what, I didn't really mean that. So sometimes the adjustment can be made there. But sometimes if you don't agree with it, you just move to a skill that enables you to not just simply stand in judgment of others. I think we're living in a time now, Tommy, where there's this balancing act between, do you sit on the sidelines and just allow wrong to happen, or do you overreact and sort of tell people off, or is there some middle ground that is appropriate? And I think each of those depends on the situation, Tommy.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a fantastic response and answer, Eric. About it. It's a tough question, and we can think and behave differently when we're not on the spot, right? And under pressure. And so I think I will offer that up to our listeners and watchers, that as we are having this conversation and you all continue to have the conversation, it's easier to think and say what we would do when we're not in the moment.
Right.
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 But then when we're in the moment and we behave in a way that ensures that we're safe and the other person is safe, or we get both of our needs met, then it's great. Again, with all due respect and prayer, the event that your son went through and his decision to discard the wallet and the cell phone one direction and cut off in another direction. I don't know, because I really don't know, if he had planned and prepared for that
Right.
years ago.
Right.
It was in the moment that the outcome was first. I need to get safe. I need to live. The response was second, with throw the wallet and cell phone that way, run that way. The event was then third, right? It just happened.
Right.
So I would say that that's the way we should proceed professionally.
Mm.
What are our outcomes when engaging with people, be it a strategic plan, the work that we do on the daily, interactions with customers, internal and external, stakeholders, those who may know what we do, may not what we do. What are the outcomes? What are our general responses to yield that outcome? And if the outcome is to elevate and to provide a service as servant leaders, then let us respond consistently as servant leaders.
Love
and
it.
allow those voices that are deterring us from responding in a servant leadership perspective to be removed quickly.
Right.
So regardless of the event, when the event comes, we simply download servant leadership, right? So, wow, the house is on fire. Servant leadership, speak calm. Eric, Judy, Penny, others, we need to evacuate the area, right? The outcome is life, to have life.
I
And
love that.
as a profession, in closing, Eric, that we've been doing a lot of work around employee belonging.
Mm-hmm.
That employees have been working in their space. COVID pandemic has disrupted their reality of how they do the work, even
Right.
their relationships with coworkers, managers, and supervisors. And there's a sense or a feeling of not belonging.
Right.
And so the outcome that they want is to belong. Their response based on certain events, work from home, no, come back into work. Or you have to do this when you work from home or virtually, then we have disconnections with technology. Those events are disrupting their response to the outcome. And now we simply don't know how to be what we need to be. That's what I'm learning. People are confused on how to be that professional.
Right.
Anymore.
Right. That's good. So let's bring this back to Judy's question. Can you share tips on how you each balance challenging organizational leaders to get movement on racial equity versus getting fired by ticking them off? Also, Black and other people of color employees within organizations want to know this as well. Tommy, I think this is really an important question for us to be able to deal with, is how do we balance that? And I would say that one of the first things that you have to do is you have to avoid the voices in your head that say that you have to represent a radical people group and just go in there and get your boss told when they say something crazy. I think it's like the song that Kenny Rogers wrote. He said, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. And so I think that you've got to take inventory on a lot of things, man, before you start, responding too aggressively. And it depends on what it is, And so I think, if you and I had time, we could put together a matrix. And I think that that's what people ultimately have to do, put together a decision matrix on what items are sustainable, that if these things occur, I can still stay here through 1 through 4. But when it gets past 5 through 10, I'm gone. I got to consider being gone. And so I think that we have to put together a matrix on leave, stay, do I have other options? I think that, first of all, you have to prepare yourself so you're never trapped somewhere. I think that that's a lot of people's frustration, is that they know the place is wrong, and they're overwhelmed because they feel trapped. So you have to prepare yourself so that you're not simply trapped because you cannot leave this place. So you have to always make yourself valuable enough
Mm.
that it's hard to treat me any kind of way because you see, you've experienced my value. And if you don't appreciate my value, then I've got enough preparedness that I'm ready to try to do some other things. Too often people are not there. They're holding on. They feel like their skills are interchangeable. The weaker we are, the more vulnerable we are to anything that people are trying to deliver to us. The other thing I would say is that you are not responsible for everybody else in the world. If you're in a family, especially if you have children, then you are responsible for them. Let me say one other story, Tommy, then I want you to weigh in on it.
Yeah.
I was doing working with a company one time. I was training the employees. The employees were giving me feedback around the managers and leaders in the company and what they did wrong. So I'd send those up. And finally, I had a chance to do a session with the leaders. And the leaders said something to me. This was back when I was a young consultant, so it made sense to me. They said to me, well, Eric, we appreciate the work you're doing with our people. We believe you've got to push back on them a little more. That you've got to tell them that if they don't raise those things with us, there's no way for us to do anything about them, brother. You know what I said, Tommy? I said, that makes good sense.
Mm.
You're right. You're right. I got to push back on the people. If they don't tell you, there's no way for you to change. You're right. So the next time I had a session with the people, young consultant, don't know anything, I'm listening to them, training them. I said, whoa, I did some work with your leaders. And they said something to me. I've got to push back on you guys a little bit. They said to me that if you don't bring the issues to them, there's no way for them to change. So I'm going to say that you've got some ownership in this as well. Then I called for a break. And then a woman comes up to me. She says, Eric, can I talk to you? I said, yeah, no problem. She says, in the hall? Okay. I felt like I got called to the principal's office.
Yeah.
And here's what she said, Tommy. I'll never forget the words. She said to me, she says, I'm really loving this class. You are such an interesting facilitator. She said, but I can't do what you've asked. I was like, well, like what? You know, I didn't even remember what I had said.
Mm-hmm.
She said, see, you asked us to push back on our manager. She says, but you don't know my boss. She says, I'm a single mother with 3 kids. She says, and I'm not likely to raise those points with my boss. She said, you see, my boss, when you're gone, he gets rid of people like it's nothing and nobody does anything about it. I need this job. I've a single mother, 3 kids. So I'm not like, and man, I shook my head, Tommy. You know what I realized, Tommy? That as consultants, sometimes we're riding in on that white horse. We give out our tidbits. And what do you and I do? We saddle up like Tonto and we get on the trail to the next place, man. And we've got to leave people back in these places. So that's one of the things that I would say. Part of the balancing act is, where are you in your life? Are you able to survive? How badly do you need this job? Sometimes that's going to mute all of us. And Tommy, here's the other thing I want to say, Tommy, that it's arrogance for anybody to act like they're not moved by powerful situations. Mm-hmm. Because for every one of us, Tommy, there's an environment where we go more silent too, isn't it?
Yes.
We're telling everybody, but you and I don't just tell these CEOs and everything honest. Yeah. We don't just run through them like a Mack truck. Sometimes we say, well, I got a thought, but I'm going to hold on to that one for a minute.
No, E, you're spot on. You're spot on. I would just add that, in balancing challenging organizational leaders, right, to either get on the movement around racial equity versus getting fired by ticking them off. I think it's a great question.
Right.
For me, very quickly, what I try to do and recommend to other people is to know who you are.
Okay.
For me, in other words, if I'm talking to leaders and if I believe I'm a leader, which I do,
right,
then there's some energy, even if they don't respect my level of leadership, right? There's some energy that I have about myself that anchors me in my value of being a leader, that I am worthy as mutual leaders to challenge you. Right. And that's on the challenging side. How do we challenge? Again, I need to be rooted in that. I've also have been that follower. And that follower role that I take, how do I challenge? I'm asking questions, right?
Excellent.
I just keep asking questions of said leader for them to give me answers. And sometimes I ask a question after the answer is given, just a deeper dive, kind of the 5 whys, right? And then with regards to racial equity, once again, I have to know who I am. Racial equity. Do I first identify myself as one of my core identities as a race? So if you do not identify yourself as a race, then it may be difficult for you to have the racial equity challenge to your boss,
Wow.
right? It's
Right.
difficult. If you do identify yourself as a race and you have been subjugated in your lifetime against the inequity of race, then there's a platform you stand on. So that it's kind of it's kind of your experience versus what you think equity is. So you are coming from a mind frame. Again, if you don't have a concept of race for your own identity, it's difficult to argue that. I want to pause there for a second because I want this to resonate with some folks who may be scratching their head to say, what are you saying? I'm saying that there are people, and we all have a particular race, who do not identify with their race.
Right.
They are racially unidentifiable, or what we call colorblind, right? And colorblind with regards to race is not true. It's a myth,
Right.
right? I am colorblind for real. I have a visual disability, 97, 98% colorblind. And so when there are individuals who do not identify any of their characteristics, their personal characteristics with a race, when you talk about equity, they may be talking about money and you're talking about race, right? It's so to challenge a leader around this movement on racial equity, you have to question or ask, is the leader that you're talking to aware of their own racial identity?
Right. Great point, Tommy.
Yep. So
Right.
I wanted to slow that down just a little
Yeah.
bit because
Yeah.
we don't want to fight battles that will move us to be emotional and we get fired by ticking another person off because a person convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. I don't see race. You're forcing me, trying to convince me that I see race. And now that I have the power as the leader to terminate you, I'm ticked off, and that's what I'll do. So now you're fired.
Right.
And then I go back to say, I still don't know what they're talking about. So
Right.
that's a battle that's lost before it starts.
Right. And if you feel like somehow you represented me as a black person by getting yourself fired, I was you don't have to do that for me.
Yeah, you're
You don't
alone
have
on
to do
that
that for me. Here's what we tell people sometimes, Tommy, that when people have relationships with one another, so I tell this to dominant culture leaders, when you build meaningful relationships with people, it reduces the likelihood that they're going to be offended by your cultural missteps. I would say the same thing on the other side, Tommy, that when we develop strong relationships with our supervisor, sometimes around racial equity, sometimes they are then willing to listen to and be influenced by our point of view, not out of conflict and in your face, but out of deep respect and value of your opinion. So there are a number of ways to be able to stand up for racial equity, and not all of them begin with strong, challenging confrontation.
Right.
Sometimes when you have developed meaningful relationships, trusting relationships, sometimes people can hear from you. I think what you have to do, I think that if you're in a place and if you begin to have any influence at all, I think that what I don't like, you have the choice to do this, but I don't like it. That if you know you're in a place that is bigoted, that's racially biased against others, and you choose to be silent only to get personal benefits from that, and you know that things are going on that are absolutely wrong, I think sometimes we have to make the decision to move on, to not just be there and benefit from an inequity-based system, and we have no intention of trying to do anything against it. Now, if you're there conveniently, then that's a problem. If you're there desperately, then you got to hold on until that oasis of a new job comes. Let's look at some other. Tommy, we have so many people that have said some great things. Let's just speed date on some of these. Larissa says, yes, acknowledge humanity and how we can all be better, then sprinkle the truth in. I like that. Kathy has said something here that I want to bring up. How do you help a leader who is a Black female who feels like being asked to display more professionalism is asking her not to be herself as an HR leader that they are being? Tommy, this is an interesting question. I think that oftentimes its impact will be different depending on the race of the person that's asking the question, right?
Right.
So there's a thing called in-group privilege and out-group sort of privilege. So when I am talking, so here, when I grew up in a family of people that were, significantly overweight. And so when you are a part of that community, you might call each other fatso, you can say stuff like that to each other because you're part of that group. But if you're super thin and you want to make that comment, then that's offensive. A lot of times people look at Black people and say we use the N-word with each other, but why can't white people use? So when you are a part of a community, you have more latitude to say things critical about that community. It begins to be difficult when you're outside of that group. So I would say that professionalism, I would say it has to be actually defined.
Yes.
I would caution against the use of the word professionalism, because that's just feels stereotypical when you're speaking to somebody in those broad terms. If somebody is not greeting customers in friendly, helpful ways, then that's what we have to say. We have to talk about people's specific behaviors that they're displaying that are helpful or not helpful. This notion of me being able to just be myself and being myself is not, working in business in honorable, respectful ways, then that's not being myself. That's not acceptable.
Yeah, so I would say as well that a few operative words here, how to help a leader who happen to be an African-American female who feels like being asked to display more professionalism is not being herself. To help another person who's sharing their feeling, first acknowledge their sharing and their feeling. That's the first part of helping them. When someone says, I feel like this, acknowledge that feeling. Secondly, with regards to professionalism, talk to that Black woman, Black female in this case, to ask her, how does she define professionalism for her? Because what I'm hearing by the latter part of that question is that she feels that she's not able to be herself. How does she define professionalism? How do others define professionalism? And how does she define herself? Right? So sometimes her own definition of herself, meaning, I want to be very vocal and I want to just speak my truth whenever I feel like it. But the organizational culture and definition of professionalism is around consensus. Right. And so that means that say your piece, but don't be a dogma, right? Don't overwhelm other people to shut them down from saying their piece. So this person may say, I just said what I felt like it. Nobody else said anything. Did you know that you shut them down?
Right.
That's when they're saying you're not professional because our definition of professionalism in an organization is to allow everyone to share. So that's at a high level. We know that we have to define what the professionalism is. And the last piece is, even if I believe that I'm not able to be myself, there may be an opportunity to help this particular leader to strengthen her own toolkit of
Yep.
professionalism,
Right.
right? So she hasn't lost herself, and we haven't lost ourselves. We've added to ourselves maybe another additional communication style or way of behaving or way of reacting or way of doing and being. So now, in our age now, hopefully we're not acting the same as we were when we were 13, 15, or even 20, because we've developed and added on to those professional acumens or abilities.
And I'd like to weigh in by adding a piece from the great author Wendell Ellis in his book, Almost Home, My Journey from 520 Pounds. Wendell says in that book, so let me give the precursor. I want to give a reminder of the importance of relationship. So I think that when we have a strong relationship with somebody, it increases the viability, the probability, the wisdom of us trying to provide people with critical feedback. And so we got to understand that most people are not interested in unsolicited feedbacks.
Yeah.
So most people are not interested in that. But what Wendell said in his book is he said that there are too many people that were supposed to love me that never shared with me any kind of feedback around my unhealthy choices.
Mm.
And he was almost challenging them, like, if you really love me like you say you love me, then you couldn't continue to watch me operate in unhealthy ways.
Wow.
That was going to put my own life at risk. So I would say build a relationship with people and then find the language to give people useful, helpful feedback that comes from a loving place. And you might even do it by self-deprecation and transparency around your own shortcomings and lessons that we've learned from that, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Let's see, Tommy, we have anything else that we want to weigh in on? Let's look at this one. One focus is on being human together. The leader creates the conditions for this to happen. Dan, thank you. Tommy, you have anything to say on that?
I do. So I would agree that being human together as a mantra is a great value and foundation to one, set up what the expectation is, and the expectation is that we are human, right? That's the expectation. We are human. Within our human identities, we do have differences. So basically, how can we, with the desired outcome to be human, respond to different people, different events, different situations, that we still end up being humane? So therefore, our thoughts, our speech, and our actions are humane, right? Regardless if it's a process, right? Just right now, we're into election season, which is a process. For those who are less familiar, this particular process happens every 4 years.
That's right.
So it's nothing new.
Right.
To all of us who are alive, because
Right.
it started well before we were born, all of us. In fact, there's a midterm election for state governments, and then local governments almost every year to every 2 years, midterms. So it happens literally every year. There's just some energy around us.
Mm-hmm.
But we're still talking about human beings in the process.
Come on now.
So as a leader, it would behoove me, if I want a better outcome selfishly for me, and then maybe less selfishly for others, if I want an outcome for others, to get as many human beings together, right? And what does that take? That takes a focus of creating that human being synergy.
Right.
Synergy. So I would just end with that. Those conditions are again very valid. We are imperfect people. We don't need to share that all the time because that's a given that no one's
Right.
perfect.
Right.
But we do have to. I would recommend that we are affirming and reminding people, reminding them that we are human, and when we do things that are wrong as a human, right? And one of the things that is wrong as a human is to act like an animal and uncivilized.
Right.
And so, like, no, that's not a human, right? Human. So I'll end it with that. Yeah, I think it's a great point.
Let me sort of weigh in with this. So I've got a friend who will go unnamed. So it says here, one focuses on being human together. The leader creates the condition for this to happen. So let me give an example. So I got a friend that's a consultant. It's working with a client. They're having a session, a training session. One of the employees gets offended by any criticism that is heaped at the leader. So the employee is always jumping up and saying, "Hey, I believe we're too hard on the leaders." I think that's one of the worst things that I see in today's society is that people just don't give enough respect to our CEOs and our leaders. And so they're just really sucking up. And so this says the leader creates the condition for this to happen, people being human together. Here's what I would say, Tommy, in that situation. Okay, are employees some of them are going to be suck ups to the boss? Mm. But what does the boss do? I think it is my responsibility when we're talking about how do we get an organization better, and some people have offered some criticism, and then somebody comes to my rescue to say, this is just not right. It's my job to say, hold on now, I appreciate your support and everything. But let's make sure that we hear everybody around what are the challenges and problems, especially those things that I can work on that will enable me to provide a better workplace environment for you all. That's what a leader has to do. They have to do that servant leadership that you were talking about before. Yep. They have to create the conditions for us being human together can exist. So I've got to start by saying that I'm imperfect. You know, I love my company, Integrity Development, as you love yours. But I cannot have the kind of culture where the only things that can be said about me are great and wonderful things.
Yeah.
Do I think there are a number of things that I do well within my company? Yes. Are there a number of things that I need to work on? Yes.
Yeah.
And so if we're interacting with people, hiring people, interviewing people, I'll say it to them in a heartbeat. Make sure you talk to our staff about what it's really like to work here. Wait till I'm not around. Ask them, pull them to the side. How's Eric really when you on a regular basis? And if they're not telling you some pros and some cons, they're probably not being honest and transparent with you.
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's go to another one, E. I can't see the comments until you pull them up, but it's all good.
Okay, so Tommy, we've gotten through most of the comments. Let me pivot to personal, and then we're going to come back to that next week. Because we said we wanted to do professional, and then we laid there this whole time. But I want to give a personal example. And then if you have one, you can, and then we'll wrap up. But we may come back to this next week. For those of you out there that have children, I was raised old school, but my father was an iteration and a progression from his father. So his father, you never said anything. His father got up at 4:30, got on the tractor, got you up. You after milking cows and all of that early in the morning before the sun ever gets up. His father never talked to him. So he allowed us to talk, but you couldn't say anything disrespectful. And so I'm kind of a little bit on that, trying to progress to the next level. So with one of my adult children, I was asking him a week ago or so to do something that had to do with the house. And it wasn't something that was going to take a long time. And so he said, well, give me 2 or 3 hours. I'm working on something. Tommy, on that particular day, I didn't have all my good wisdom. All my greatest instincts were not available to me. And I sort of went old school. And I really went some places, man, and said some things that just were not right. Judy was listening. Now I'm an easygoing guy for most times. But when I get on my high horse, really ain't nobody getting me off.
Mm.
You know, she's trying to tell me to, and that's only making me more strong that I've run this. This is how we do here, da da da. And you know, he went back and forth, and I said, "Well, if you don't want to do that, well, let's just not do anything for each other. Let's just both do that." You know, I went there with it.
Yeah.
And Tommy, it took me a day, but the next day, my wife shared with me the conversation that she had with my son and some of the questions that he had about, did daddy really mean this?
Mm. Mm.
Tommy, I heard it, and I heard it clearly.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, I was overcome by this deep love that I have for my children and my desire for them to never misunderstand how unconditional my love is. And so I called my son up and I apologized to him. And I literally broke, man. I just said, Evan, I was wrong when I said this. It was wrong. There's no excuse for it whatsoever. And he was like, Daddy, I understand. I said, no, son. I said, there's just no excuse for that. And I need you to know how much I love you. And I'll never not be there for you. And I was weeping, man. And he could feel, I was just grateful, Tommy, that God didn't let me pass through this world and not see myself.
Yes.
And not see the harm of what I had done. And that he gave me the opportunity, if you will, to come back and to apologize with a genuineness, not a token apology, not a forced apology, but a deep sense of insight as to how important my words are and how they matter and the eternal impact that they can have on people's lives. So that's what I would say, Tommy, is that sometimes personally, man, when we're wrong, we got to go back and we got to really make it right with a genuine, deep apology, not just something that feels like it's surface.
Eric, I appreciate you sharing again that story. And sometimes we just have to do it when we are in the wrong and we want to right it. Just do it, right? There's, pride and ego is something else.
Yeah, it is.
We have to get out of our own ways to allow, as believers, the path that has already been written for us.
Right.
See again, because what God did is He ordained our life.
Woo!
Set the path.
Come on, brother.
Gave us free will.
Right.
Go off the tracks.
Right.
He says you can go off the tracks.
Right.
It's up to you.
Right.
And then he allows us to start on the path. And now in your season and your son's season, we come up to a point, just an event, a crossroad.
Right. That's it.
And you rev the engine. You're burning out, right? And possibly your son, who is on the passenger side, he's riding with you, Eric.
Right.
Right? He's just not paying attention to you. You're driving. He's still looking at you for the advice to give him direction, not just pushing the pedal, but is this the right road, Dad? Come on, Pops. Is God real that will lay a path for me as well? Because I'm eager to get off and get on my own path, and you burn rubber on him. Now he's like outside of the car. What happened?
What was that?
What was that? What was that? And then for you to be able to hear the back seat driver who saw both of you in the front seat, right? Let me just watch this.
That's it. That's it, Tommy.
Right?
It, Tommy Lewis.
And then you say, "Oh, I'm sorry," right? And come back. Your son may have very well received the apology, right? Very well received it, but still needs to be affirmed that when it's his time
Mm.
to get on the driver's side
Come
on
on
his
now.
road and
Come
look
on.
to his right and have his seed, will he repeat what his father did, what his grandfather did, what his great grandfather did, or will he be able to drive with a new sense of ability?
That's profound, brother.
This is good. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being an open ear for your wife to speak to you. Thank you for Evan. Evan, who is finding his way,
I love that.
finding his way,
I love that.
regardless of the age, regardless of the season. I will offer up to Evan myself, Tommy Lewis, and you don't know me terribly well, Evan, if you're listening to it. It doesn't, I would say, maybe even different than your parents, maybe the same. When your time comes,
That's good.
it will impregnate you so heavily that you will not be able to control giving birth to that newness, that new you. It can be your idea, your identity, your path. You may even jump out of the car and start to run
Mm.
because God will impregnate you with that. You will
Woo!
say, "That's enough. I got to go." And Pops, I got a new whip, got a new car. Get on the passenger side and ride with me.
Right.
That's
Right.
what's going to happen.
I love that, Tommy. And Tommy, we can't just end just yet. We're gonna wrap up. We're gonna just go a couple minutes over. But Tommy, let me just share a couple things with you. So there were two major revelations that came out of that. One was God showed me my responsibility to the gifts that He's given me, my wife and my children. He also showed me the impact of my words on their life, their self-esteem, and their confidence. And when God crystallized that and made it super clear very quickly how powerful my words were, I was crushed into humility by that. I was literally just devastated because I said, God, I love what you've given me.
Yes.
I wanted children when I was a kid. I don't want to be one of those parents that scars their children. Thank you for letting me see that. And when I came back with a brokenness and an honesty and a humility, my son received that. And the response that he received it came like this: Daddy, I know I've got things to work on. He said, it's kind of hard for me right now to get motivated to do a lot of things. He says, so when I'm working on some things to try to move myself forward, he says, I know that I don't do well at sharing responsibilities and doing other things. I'm going to work to get better at that. You were right. Wow. And I'm thankful, Tommy, that we get to be here on this earth as human beings, man. Yeah. And you and I, every week, man, we get the chance, we get the opportunity to get better, don't we?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We get a chance to be better, to sharpen each other. The things that you have said are so profound. I'm going to have to, like Bill Brown said from last week, he said, I've watched that show 3 or 4 times. I'm going to have to go back and watch this part a few times and to review what you've said, man. And I know that I don't usually use names at all when it comes to my kids. It slipped out today, but I'm glad it slipped out because it gave you an opportunity to speak to my son if he ever sees this. Yes. In ways that would encourage him, man. And I know, Tommy, I know how deeply you care about your own children, man. And I love that about us, man. We are Black men that love our families, that love our kids, and that really do love doing the will of God and getting better, man. I appreciate this partnership with you.
I love you, Eric. I love you.
I love you too.
Your family. My ancestors, your parents are the shoulders that I stand on. Facts.
That's
right.
It.
We know your father's pioneering the space and folks that instilled in him and sowing the land literally and figuratively. sowing the land. So it's always an honor. It's time well spent. It's energy well spent, and for the community that continues to join us every Saturday morning, thank you. And I hope that it's time well spent for you as well.
My name is Eric Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development. If you want to get in touch with me, you can find me at 513-874-6836. You can also find us on the web at www.integritydev, short for development, DEV.com. Tommy, how can they reach you?
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. You can contact us via telephone 513-421-2300, or you can find us on the web at www.mipcllc.com. Thank you, Eric. I love you to death, my friend.
I love you too, man. We having too much fun, y'all. We don't have enough time, but we will see you next week as we move closer to this major election. Hopefully you've gotten out to vote. I don't care who you vote for. Just make sure that you get out and vote, and then love somebody and engage in a powerfully positive diversity conversation. Have a great week.
Great week.